And today, guys, what we're going to do, we're going to do a special podcast right now that is usually only included when you're at a live event. At the end of a live event, Spiritual DNA, we always do a session called Putting It All Together, where I go through and put together a handful of people's spiritual DNA results and kind of help them understand and interpret the results. Hey, welcome back to the Daron Earlewine podcast. It's just you and me this week. Stoked to sit back down with you guys. And I got breaking news. Spiritual DNA, the brand new edition, is live right now. You can go right now and buy it at spiritualdna.me. And stick around to the end of this episode. I'm going to give you a promo code that you can get $30 off the course. And today, guys, what we're going to do, we're going to do a special podcast right now that is usually only included when you're at a live event. At the end of a live event, Spiritual DNA, we always do a session called Putting It All Together, where I go through and put together a handful of people's spiritual DNA results and kind of help them understand and interpret the results. And this is one of the special things that happens when you come to a Spiritual DNA live event. If you ever have a chance to come to one, I would suggest you do, because you get a chance to interact with me, some of our team members, and even a table leader that can help you unpack this. But we wanted to make it available to you, the podcast audience, because I know a ton of you guys have been waiting for the brand new DNA to come out. You're ready to go buy the course, and this episode is going to equip you to be able to get the most out of your results and the most out of going through the online course. And so I'm excited to put it together, and I'm excited to give this to you as a free resource to make it happen for you here as part of the podcast. So thanks so much for joining us. And here's how we're going to do it today. I'm going to kind of explain to you the philosophy that I put together and kind of what I'm looking for as I'm helping look through someone's spiritual DNA results, to give you some principles on that. And then we're going to walk through 3 different DNA results. Mine, one of our alumni named Craig, and then another alumni named Valerie. And as we walk through, I'm just going to kind of put the pieces together. And I think it's going to start making sense. And like I said before, my goal is that when we get done is that this equips you to be able to interpret your results as you finish up going through the online course here in the near future. So first and foremost, guys, here's what I want you to know is the order in which we've put together Spiritual DNA, the online course, matters. The order matters, and it was chosen strategically, and being able to interpret your results well needs to follow this pattern. So here's how it goes. It starts with who. Then it goes to why, then it goes to what, and the last is where. And then we plug those together with the actual assessments. We start and we talk about your who, which is your APEST or your 5-fold ministry calling. That's going to be out of Ephesians chapter 4. You're going to be looking at whether you're an apostle, prophet, evangelist, shepherd, or teacher in the kingdom of God. It's important that you start with who, to start with that sense of identity in God's kingdom as the way you interpret your results. One of the ways I say this in Spiritual DNA, and I'll say it for you here right now, is imagine this is almost like your the uniform that you wear, or your position on the team. It's the who you are in God's kingdom, in the role that you've been created and called to play and to serve in. And so you start by that being your foundational, and everything else we're gonna go through, you're gonna see that it comes back and applies back to how and why and what you do as that role. Okay, so it starts with the who, then we go to why, and we unpack that with the Enneagram. The reason we go there first is for one, this is called Spiritual DNA because this is a spiritual development situation. This isn't about just us and being awesome with how we're unique. It's about us reflecting the heart and the character of Christ in the unique way that he has created us to do so. And so we want to start second or have second in line this understanding of the Enneagram in your why. And by your why, we're talking about what motivates you, some core motivations, some core sins. And it's important to get into this because it's going to help chart the course towards development and maturity that you need to live in the fullness of your DNA. One of the things I say in the strength session, actually in DNA, is that we have to reject the myth of being well-rounded. And I think that's absolutely true when it comes to what we do most profoundly with our gifts, but it doesn't mean that we can somehow skip or subjugate or not be involved in the process of becoming well-rounded in our character and in our character development. And so the Enneagram is going to help us do that. It's going to show some motivations. It's going to show some things that are happening under the surface for us to really begin to round out the process, okay? It's also going to help, not even just the negative, but there are some positives there to see how we're going to interact with others relationally into certain situations, and it definitely combo mills up in a powerful way with that who. So why a second? Then we got to look at what we do unique, 1 in 33 men, which is your strengths. And we go there because now we're getting ready now we're starting to understand the tools that we have, that we've been uniquely gifted to actually fulfill the purpose of who we are, so that what we do, okay, now we know often why we're doing it, and then it informs how we fulfill the mission of who we are. So that's the order we want to go. And then lastly, we're going to look at where we do it. And that's through the passion and pain assessment, and looking at where are you passionate? Where does the rubber meet the road as far as servanthood? And where does everything that you've learned about yourself, who you are, why you do, what you do, where does it actually meet and make a difference in the world? And that's why we end with passion. I've like I said, I've developed DNA over the past 20 years, and there's purpose behind. I've taken thousands and thousands of people through the course, and so this order makes sense. I think I probably maybe told you guys a story before, but when I first started, I started trying to help people figure out spiritual gifts. Then I started trying to start with what you're passionate about first, and it, in that order, it caused more confusion and less momentum in being able to become who you're born to be. So that's why we take it in that order. So that's where we're going to look order-wise. As you take some time, I would encourage you to think through that as you're interpreting your own results, as you're finishing Spiritual DNA, the online course, which is available right now at spiritualdna.me. Anyway, let's take a look at one other element, which I want you to see is one of the things that I look for oftentimes as I'm looking at people's results is in my brain what I call input-output. And so what I'm looking for is certain gifts, oftentimes in the strengths area, and sometimes even in the Enneagram results, things that would be that are going to be things that have a natural input-output connection between you. So, for instance, one thing that I would look for is, let's say we have a teacher, somebody's a teacher guardian, who they're going to be, right, instructing, guiding, and directing, whether it be through God's word or through just complex issues in life. There's going to be a natural output of information and knowledge in their life. What I look for often is there a naturally designed by God input that's going to be easy, accessible, and natural to them. So oftentimes what I'm looking for is a connection for maybe a teacher to have gifts in input, individualization, ideation, or a learner. These are things that you'll see that combo up, which then if you have your results and you don't really see much of any connection between input and output, chances are that that you may be off a little bit in one of your assessments, and probably not the Strengths Finders. The Strengths Finder is one of the most scientifically proven results we use, or assessments we use in Spiritual DNA. And so I would actually use that often as kind of a plumb line. If you have tested shepherd, let's say shepherd nurturer in the fivefold, but as you go through strengths, none of your top 5 have anything to do with the relationship building skills, you may have tested and influenced the test in a way that's not totally correct. And you might want to go back and take a look at that. So you're looking for an input-output connection. That's something for you guys to dig into. And those are some of the key things. Let me walk through my results real quick, just so you can see how I see it in mine. We're going to walk through Craig's and Valerie's as well. And here's what I want to say. Is what I just talked there about that you could be off in your who or your fivefold. One of the things we teach in Spiritual DNA, if you go through the course, you'll hear me talk about this, but is the idea of base and phase as far as your role within God's kingdom with your who, with the fivefold. And what that means is that everyone has a base or foundational role, calling that God has given you. But all of the callings are accessible to you because they all originate in God's Spirit, which is within you. And there may be seasons or phases of life where you have to step into one of the roles in a more heavy capacity. Okay, so for instance, what's interesting for me is for years is I took the assessments and I came out as an apostle. And I would tell people I'm apostolic. That's what I am. After 20 years of living in this and digging through it and going through different phases, and there was one time I took the assessment as I was taking people through it, and I came out teacher. I'm not a base role teacher, but I was in a season where I was having to teach a lot and actually break things down, complex understandings about God's kingdom and the word and discipleship. And I was in a teaching phase, but that's not my core role. And I think, honestly, one of the things that's made sense to me more recently is I believe I'm a base calling evangelist in God's kingdom. That's who I am, an evangelist connector. But here's what I think is when I was discovering and putting spiritual DNA together, and as I was walking into understanding the fivefold callings in Ephesians 4 most fully, is I had lived most of my life in a very repressed apostolic reality. I didn't even know that was a thing. And I think I'm kind of a hair's breadth, right? I'm right there, kind of an apostle, kind of an evangelist. And so I think at that point I was in a phase of more apostolic discovery and ministry. But a base role for me, I'm an evangelist. Okay. Jumping down, next thing for me, that's who I am. That's my base. Okay. And so that I wanted to do the base phase thing because I wanted you to see that, because you may be right now where you took the results and you go, man, it doesn't really line up. If I'm thinking about that input output you just said, Daron, the reality is I think I'm probably a little bit more of a teacher than a prophet, or a teacher than an apostle. You take a look at the circumstances of your life right now and see, is it possible that you're just in a phase of using that calling, but that may not be your base call within God's kingdom, okay? Next for me, as far as Enneagram, I'm a type 7, and I'm a type 7 through and through. I'm a type 7 wing 6, and this this is very true for me. I've never had to question this as I've gotten into it. And so the why, what motivates me, the lie behind the surface happening for me, right, is I am what I have, and what I need to have to feel safe and right in the world is I need to have freedom and I need to have options. And for me, this has made a lot of sense on both the apostolic and the evangelistic side of things, because for me, I have always, in some ways, and this is where the maturity comes, I've rebelled against systems and structures and rules. And I have felt myself as a rebel for a long time. In fact, later this year, the book that I've written, The Death of a Dream, Resurrecting Purpose When Life Doesn't Go as Planned, there's a whole chapter where I unpack this understanding of the balance between being rebellious or being a rogue. And for me, this Enneagram 7-ness in me, this motivation, it fits perfectly with being a rogue person being sent out for the kingdom to do new things. But in immaturity, it can look like rebellion. And so for me, I've had to see that part, and it's very much informed a place of growth that I need to go through in my life. Okay, for a 7, okay, one of the core sin for a 7 is gluttony, and if the 7 had a motto for life, it'd be this: more is better. And they usually have a huge network of friends and relationships, and they're really good at connecting people to resources and people to people. I look at my life as an evangelist, as that's who God's created me to be. Being a type 7 is like it's like a superpower in the evangelism to be able to actually step into that role as a 7, that I'm always inviting more people in. I'm always bringing things together. I'm always collecting information and ideas and wanting to share and connect them with people and people to resources. And that's what I do with my teaching most often, right? It's through that lens of evangelism that I'm driven, and that's my why. A lot more I could unpack there, but there's a strong connection where the input output, like I said, right? They marry up. Going into my strengths, here are my strengths. Futuristic, in this order: futuristic, communication, woo, strategic, and activator. You can see within those 5 strengths how well those two mesh together, more of an apostolic evangelist type role in my life. Futuristic, right? This theme, I'm inspired by the future and what could be. Like, I literally sign my emails creating the future. I'm enamored by the idea of what we can go out, do, and innovate and start and actually create. You look at the idea of communication, right? I'm good at conversation and presentations. Like, could there be any better gift to give an evangelist, apostle, evangelist, type 7 than a gift in the strength of communication? Woo. Here's another one, right? People that are woo. They love the challenge of meeting new people and winning them over. You look at the role of an evangelist, basically it's just woo. That's the piece of it, right? So right there, once again, the input output, we see that I'm uniquely created by God to do what God's created me to do well. It's just natural because God knew what he was doing when he made you and he made me. That's why we say every time with the podcast, right? Create on purpose or for a purpose. Great coffee cup. You can get one if you want. All right. Last two is for me, strategic and activator. Both of these are great input and output for my life, and they make sense as you interpret that through and see what God was doing when he put me together. The last thing, right, is you look through is your passion and pain. And for me, as I go through the pain journey of my life, it's a lot of what I unpack in my book coming out this year, The Death of a Dream. And for me, the idea of connecting people to the pain for me was chasing after dreams that I felt like I'd put in my heart, but not knowing if I was actually gifted to do them or if they were even allowed within God's kingdom. The idea that God was against me, not for me, and that these were just things I was dreaming up, and I didn't know that I actually made sense and was created on purpose and for a purpose. In the process of discovering that has given me great passion to help unlock that in you, right? The mission and passion of my life is to awaken individuals to become who God's created them to be. And so much of that was mined out through the pain of my journey and chasing and seeing dreams die and being resurrected by God. And I'm uniquely created by God to do that. My spiritual DNA brings me to a place where I go, oh my gosh, I make sense. That's a quick run through of how I think through interpreting results for spiritual D. And I hope it helps you to be able to sit down and to kind of workshop your own results and get the most out of it, to know where God's leading and guiding and directing you in the adventure that he's inviting you into. Okay. Let me walk you through two other ones, two other alumni that as I go through theirs, I'm like, wow, this is pretty impressive. And it makes a ton of sense. The first one is an alumni, a guy named Craig. Okay. Craig. And, We'll bring some of those results in so you can see them. And it's not just what I'm saying if you're watching here on YouTube, right? But Craig is who he is. He's a teacher. He's a teacher guardian in God's kingdom, okay? He is also an Enneagram 8 wing 7, or what we would call the challenger, okay? So Craig, teacher, challenger. This is a great combo because oftentimes to be a great teacher, you have to be able to function with high grace and truth. You can't be afraid of tough conversations if you're going to be able to teach and guide people through processes, through chaos, through confusion. And so being an 8 for Craig is a great thing to match up to because if you have an understanding of like the truth, so help you truth, like that he wants the truth, nothing but the truth, so help me God. Craig's not going to be afraid of that, and it's a great pairing with him being a teacher. Then you go through his strengths, and this is it's really fun. Here's his top 5 strengths: relator, achiever, strategic, learner, and input. Now, once again, I'm talking about finding those input and output. Look at those last two for Craig. He's a learner and has input. I pulled some of these up so you guys could hear this, right? Listen to this. If you are a teacher, right, that wasn't afraid to challenge and bring truth out into people's life, wouldn't it be great to have this strength? A learner. You are energized by the steady and deliberate journey from ignorance to competence. Like that basically says the role of a teacher. What's interesting, as I want to bring in this as well, is Craig's greatest passion, okay, is mentoring, is mentorship of other people. And so you look at how he's been given this ability to learn, and even here's input. One of his other strengths is this: you are inquisitive. You collect things. You might collect information, words, facts, books, or quotations. You might even collect tangible objects. He's a learner that has the gift of input, of bringing in all of these different things. And then you look at the output in his life is to be a teacher with a passion for mentoring, right? There's a constant flow of input and output that fills him up, that he's able to actually give out through servanthood and others. It's an amazing combination. One of his other strengths that I think is cool is the top one, which is relator. Listen to this, the definition of a relator. Once the initial connection has been made in a relationship, you as a relator deliberately encourage a deepening of a relationship. You want to understand the feelings, the goals, and the fears, the dreams of others, and you want them to understand yours. That strength right now, right there, could not be put together any better for a teacher, guardian in God's kingdom who is passionate about mentorship. When you look at Craig in that whole process, you go, this guy makes sense. He's been made on purpose and for a purpose. Last one I want to give you guys as you look through how to interpret these results is DNA alumni Valerie. And Valerie's a shepherd. Okay, she's a shepherd nurturer in God's kingdom. That's who she is. And her Enneagram type is she's a type 6 called the loyalist. That's a great connection for somebody who is a shepherd because they're A, loyal, B, they're going to think through all kinds of scenarios, of potential worst case scenarios, and then find ways to see them not happen so they can take care and love and be loyal to the people that they're shepherd nurturing. And you think about like actually a shepherd in like first century time taking care of sheep, they would have had to probably be Enneagram 6s, right? Sitting down there in the shepherd, like in a sheep pen, thinking about where are the potential dangers of wolves and different things here. How can I make sure that I'm here to protect and be loyal to the lives of my sheep? That's what a 6 would do. Valerie does that. And then you get into her strengths and look at what she can do. 1 in 33 million. This is her DNA. Developer, empathy, responsibility, belief, and individualization. If I was looking for someone to nurture me in life, I'm ordering Valerie all day, every day. Enneagram 6, developer, empathy, responsibility, belief, and individualization. So powerful in that. I love just breaking down the idea of the individualization strength that Valerie has, right? It says this: your individualization theme leads you to be intrigued by the unique qualities of each person. You are impatient with generalizations or types because you don't want to obscure what is special and distinct about each person. Input and output. Valerie has been given, God has wired her brain to be able to have a strength in individualization, which is an input then to an output to be an amazing shepherd. I want you to find these connections. Oh, by the way, she's passionate about helping and mentor kids, right? I mean, it's just beautiful to see. When you get on this path to discover how God has uniquely created you on purpose and for a purpose, and you begin putting these pieces together, you will start changing the world around you. And I hope that this was helpful to you guys to go through and to see how this works. Now to get through DNA right now, go to spiritualdna.me. And I want you to use promo code DE podcast. Okay. Letter D, letter E podcast, promo code DE podcast. And we're going to give you $30 off the course instantaneously. Okay, brand new videos, brand new participant guide, and we're going to give it to you for $30 off right now. I'm so excited. It's finally launched. You can go to spiritualdna.me, buy the course, put in promo code DE, Daron Earlewine, right? DE podcast, all one word, and you're going to get $30 off the course. I want you to jump into it, and as you get to the end of it, as you go through the process of putting it all together, at the back of the participant guide, there's a page for you to put all your results down. I want you to put the headphones on, listen through this episode of the podcast so you can have a little bit of a cheat sheet to know how to get the most out of your results. Hey, if you got questions when you get done, I'm here for you. Just email me, Daron@blackbirdmission.com. You can also text me your questions, 317-550-5070. Would love to help you get the most out of your results, the most out of your spiritual DNA experience. Because listen, you've got to understand this, because when you do, here's what's going to happen. You're going to know that God's created you on purpose and for a purpose. You're going to know that God is for you, not against you. And you're going to know that God is near you, not far away. And before you know it, you're going to start seeing your world change. And I'm here for it. I can't wait. Thanks for joining me with another episode of the Daron Earlewine podcast. Looking forward to hearing back from you. Thank you for those that have left a review or on YouTube or on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen, or on Facebook. Thanks so much for those of you who have subscribed and shared this episode and other episodes with friends and neighbors. I really do appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. And we'll see you next time right here on the Daron Earlewine podcast.